Odds, over-under odds for all 14 teams in the SEC. Where did these originate?
I forgot to note that, actually, on the notes because I lack basic human intellect. These come from Bet Online.
Okay.
They come from Las Vegas. They come from the desert.
Yeah, Bet Online. We'll get a few more of these over the summer, but they are always fun.
Sure, we will. And you can check out the futures that are available at the Sportsbook at Timeout Lounge when you're at Pearl River Resort. These are fun to talk about, though. Over-unders, win totals for the year. Alabama, 10.5. I know what Haydad's doing with that.
I mean, they play 12 games, right? So
They
let's
do.
go over. Yeah.
12 of these are regular season win totals. So this gives you the cushion of Alabama losing one, but not losing more than one. If you take 10.5, you got some wiggle room with Alabama. That historically is a pretty safe bet.
And they get Tennessee and Vanderbilt from the East. So.
And Texas. Don't forget Texas.
Not this year, they don't.
Yeah, they do, in Austin.
Oh,
Alabama has
that's right.
Texas
That's right.
week
That's
two.
right. Yeah, week 2. I'm sorry, non-conference.
Yeah, it's just one of those walkthrough games before the conference schedule actually begins. So.
Ooh. That Texas LSU game in Austin a couple of years ago was fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
Great game.
This won't be that.
That was the birth of the Joe Burrow Heisman campaign.
Yes.
You know who I feel bad for? I don't actually feel bad for this person. I'm more or less going to laugh at this person when it happens. The Texas booster sitting up in their box on the 50-yard line who gave Quinn Ewers millions of dollars is going to watch him throw 3 interceptions in a 28-point loss to Alabama in week 2. I would really love to be in the box or just like have a camera facing that guy during the game while he watches his multi-million-dollar investment get completely outclassed by Bryce Young on his home field. I really want to see that happen.
Okay. Are we confident that Quinn Ewers is going to be the starter at Texas?
Maybe not. Which also I would love to see the camera on that guy, knowing his multi-million-dollar investment is not starting.
Arkansas, 7.5. Do you like the over or the under?
Pretty difficult
very much
schedule
like the
here
over.
for Arkansas. It really is. I mean, they get a break with Cincinnati having lost everything, but are we really just going to put W next to the game at BYU a week after they're in Starkville? Because I'm not.
Did you say very much over, Haydad?
Yeah, we did Arkansas this week for our SEC preview on the Thunder and Lightning podcast, and I had them 10-2.
Really?
Borky's head. Do you see it snap?
Who are the 2 losses?
Snapped. Bama and
A&M?
I don't remember who the other one was. No, I think it may have been Mississippi State.
So to get to 8, right? Because it's 7.5. To get to 8, how many wins are we giving them? I'm going to give them Cincinnati. I think they will beat Cincinnati at home to start the season. Considering everything they lost, quarterback, the entire secondary, which was really good, I'll actually give them Cincinnati, Missouri State, and Liberty.
Okay.
So there's 3.
Well, if they lose to BYU, that means they've got to go 5-3 in the SEC.
And the thing is, man, I know Missouri's not going to be particularly good. They're in Columbia. They're at Jordan-Hare. Not an easy place to play a football game. Their home games are actually games that I think that they're going to lose. I mean, Alabama, it being in Fayetteville is not going to change anything. Texas A&M, that's your jokes Arlington. Or whatever. That's in Arlington, though. Getting to 8
They have a good coach and a good quarterback. I like them.
Okay.
They scheduled brutal.
Yeah.
Well, they really thought the Chad Morris era would be taken off by now, and they were ready for it.
Well, it's not an easy schedule, but it is a better schedule for Arkansas because they've got 7 games in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
They're not playing in Little Rock this year, and they are the away team, the designated away team in that neutral site game in Arlington. Mississippi State at 6.5. I mean, I think
they'll
like
be
the over.
improved. Yeah, I think they'll be improved over last year. They won 7 last season, and that's with a couple of games where they couldn't kick field goals. I think they can go over that.
They do replace Vanderbilt with Georgia, though, in their East opponent this year. But they're also not going to lose to Memphis.
I think they'll beat Memphis, and that sort of is a wash.
All right, so, hey, Dad, we've talked about this some.
Mm-hmm.
They are worse on the offensive line than they were last year.
They're worse at one position.
3. Yeah, but it's the most important position on the offense.
I mean, I get that, but they returned 3 starters, and they can't be worse than Scott Lashley was at right tackle. So they just got to be, okay at left tackle.
Well, they got to be a whole lot better at right tackle.
Yeah, but I think that's almost, man, I feel like that's a given.
Okay. Is it because of the year 3 for Mike Leach and his programs tend to take a step forward in year 3? Or is it because of Will Rogers and his experience at starting quarterback, even though you've had him getting beat out for that job the last 2 years?
I don't have him getting beat out for that job anymore.
Not this year? Not anymore?
I think it's just a combination of everything. You return a lot of production. You've been good in the portal and getting guys that you feel like can come in and contribute immediately. You got a kicker, which you didn't have last year. I think there's just, and I just feel like they'll just be.
We're
only talking about one game. I feel like they've got a kicker. The guy was good at Coastal Carolina last year. I feel like kicking isn't like being a cornerback. I feel like that's going to translate wherever you go.
So let's get to 7 then. I think they will be a favorite hot take. They'll be a favorite in all 4 of their non-conference games, even in Tucson.
Okay.
So give them 4 there.
So that means
Memphis,
they have Arizona, Bowling Green, and East Tennessee State. That's 4. They got to get 3 more.
They got to get 3 more. They have to go 3 and 5 in the SEC. Where do those 3 come from?
Auburn. They get Auburn at home. I think they'll beat them. And
5.
then some combination of A&M, Kentucky, Arkansas, Ole Miss. I feel like, and maybe even LSU. I could throw that in because it's so early. I think they can get 2. They can go 2 and 3 in that setup.
Okay. I mean, I tend to agree with you. I think if I were making a play there, I would play the over. My only hesitation, though, was on they're going to be better than they were last season.
I just think, we're only talking about 1 game's worth of improvement to get to 8 wins.
Yeah. Okay. Texas A&M at 8.5.
That's the sweet spot right there. Really tough call. I would say over, but I would not be pleased about putting my money on that.
Ole Miss at 7.5.
We're up against the break, so let's save that.
Okay.
Okay.
On Texas A&M, though, I mean, they go to Starkville, they go to Tuscaloosa, hell, they go to Columbia, South Carolina. You think that's an easy place to go win a football game? I know the rosters are going to be quite different in terms of talent, but you don't just walk into Williams-Brice and win football games easily. I'm tempted to go under here.
Okay. We get a message on the C Spire text line that says over on Arkansas, 8-4, maybe 9-3. Got a good feeling about the Hogs this fall.
You and me both.
.com. You can send us your reactions to these SEC over-unders on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. We get this one. I want to say over on Texas A&M, but I feel like come the end of the season, I will be slapping and cussing myself. Alabama over, Mississippi State slightly over. The totals that we looked at so far: Alabama 10.5, Arkansas 7.5, Mississippi State 6.5, A&M 8.5. Let's get to Ole Miss now. 7.5 is the win total for Ole Miss. Right. Stuart Mandel at The Athletic wrote a kind of an interesting story, kind of a season preview for this Ole Miss team. And he talked about what Ole Miss lost, but also Lane Kiffin and the transfer portal. And there are a lot of questions. I mean, there are just a lot of questions surrounding this Ole Miss team, none more prominent than who's going to start at quarterback.
Yeah, they have except for quarterback, although he did start 6 games last year. A lot of unproven guys that they're going to rely on. What's interesting is they're proven elsewhere. They just haven't done it at Ole Miss or in the SEC largely. I mean, this receiver from UCF, the way people write and talk about him is glowing. You mentioned that article. There's a defensive staffer, the anonymous defensive staffer, that says that guy's going to be a superstar. But you don't know because he did it at UCF and in the AAC and not in the SEC. Most people believe that they're going to be better at running back, but it was Zach Evans who was in the Big 12 and Ulysses Bentley who was at SMU, and talented guys produced, but not at this level. It's such an interesting team because it's not like it's a bunch of guys that have never played before stepping into new roles. That's what rebuilding used to be in college football, or at least for most people anyway. They rebuilt with guys that have done it, just not at this level. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and you got 3 starters returning on the offensive line, but a reshuffle of even the guys that are coming back and kind of moving people around to different spots. There are a lot of questions. And also 5 new members of the coaching staff, including a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator, Chris Partridge, obviously was on staff as co-defensive coordinator, but it's now his defense. If spring practice was any indication, they may be a little more aggressive defensively, trying to go after the quarterback than they were, at least at the beginning of the year. They kind of changed that philosophy a little bit halfway through the season a year ago. So the question is over or under 7.5. And if you feel good about Ole Miss and its non-conference games, which are Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech on the road, and Tulsa,
double-digit favorites in each, and then they get a gift with Vanderbilt.
4-0 there. 5-0. That's 5 wins there. So we need 3 more. So they need to go 3-4 in conference play in their remaining 7 of Kentucky. Take Alabama out of the equation. Of Kentucky, Arkansas, A&M, Auburn, LSU, Mississippi State. Can they win 3 of those games? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they get breaks with beatable teams at home, right? I mean, you have Auburn, who you assume is beatable at home. Kentucky's going to be quite good, but you think that is a team that you can match up with. It's a winnable game for sure at home. You get the Egg Bowl at home. So you have these, games against comparable teams that you certainly can win. You don't have to stretch your mind to get to a win there at your place.
Yeah. And, what is Arkansas going to look like in their 11th game of the season? Is Arkansas going to be a well-oiled machine at that point? Or are they a roster that, kind of like Ole Miss, is probably going to be good with its first 11 on both sides of the ball, but maybe in terms of depth isn't quite there yet? Fayetteville's not a place where Ole Miss has traditionally played very well.
Just take the over in that game. That's all I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, you've been pretty consistent on that.
What's so funny?
Why wouldn't I be?
Yeah. So counter to what you've thought about Ole Miss football since Hugh Freeze was hired, anyway. When you look at their schedule and games, even through Auburn, so the first 7 games on their schedule, defense and running the football. That's how they're going to win those games. Defense and running game. And they should be able to out-talent these teams by doing that. That is so anti-Ole Miss as of late. It's hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah. So maybe a cautious over. But by the way, somewhere along the way, you got to take some unders on this as well. Not everybody's going to win more than their projected win total for the season. And yet here we are. We've gone over on Alabama, over on Arkansas, over on Mississippi State. On A&M, over on Ole Miss.
I'm not quite there with over on Arkansas. Speaking of 7 wins in Arkansas, did you see the stipulation in Sam Pittman's new contract, by the way? Nothing screams we are a big-time program like putting language in your coach's contract that if he wins 7 games, including a bowl win, by the way, one time, he gets another year added to his contract. Just once. 1 7-win season, which can include a bowl win, extends his contract automatically.
$5 million a year base salary plus incentives.
He gets an extra $5 million for going 6-6 and beating Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl. Yeah, big time programs do stuff like that for sure.
LSU 6.5.
So Auburn, huh? Okay, LSU, 6.5. God. I mean, my first inclination is over again. It's LSU.
Do you think they're beating Florida State in the
Kelly's
opener?
Coach. Yes.
They're going to beat Southern. They're going to beat New Mexico.
They're
going
going
to
4-0 in
beat
non-conference.
UAB. That's 4.
I can easily find 5 losses here, though.
Florida and who else is the East?
Tennessee.
Oh, they may go 0-2
It's in
there.
Baton Rouge.
They still may go 0-2 there.
Man, I'm not confident they're beating Mississippi State. I'm not confident they're beating Auburn. This is a transition year.
6.5?
It's a
6.5.
6.5. It's a transition year.
They go 7-5.
They added a bunch of guys in the portal. Sure, you don't know who's going to play quarterback. You're not real thrilled with all of your options, if you're being totally honest. It's a roster by the end. I mean, it's LSU, right? You always assume just great players all over the field. By the end, it wasn't up to par. It might take a couple years for him to really start winning at the highest level. I think he will, but
he'll break out the voodoo dolls at some point and win. I'm going to go over.
I think 7-5 is probably the right number for LSU.
Yeah, it just feels right.
I would be less surprised about LSU going 8-4 than I would about them going 5-7.
Yeah.
Auburn at 5.5.
I mean, I think they could go 6-6, but
Non-conference
5-7
games for
seems...
Auburn are Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, and Western Kentucky.
3-1.
You think they lose the Penn State game?
Mm-hmm.
From the East, they've got Missouri and Georgia. And that Missouri game comes on the heels of the Penn State game, and it is at home. And Auburn does not leave Jordan-Hare Stadium until October 8th. They play their first 5 at home.
They'll split
their East games.
Smash it. They're going to a bowl game. Smash the over. Smash it. Even if it's at 6 on the nose.
I mean, I don't think they're
going
favored in any game. I don't think they'd be favored in any SEC game except for the Missouri game.
Doesn't mean they don't win some of them. You just don't think they'll be favored.
No. I'm going to say 5-7. I'll say under.
Whew. Georgia at 10.5.
I mean, they were 6-6 last year. I'm not stretching the imagination here. 10.5, over.
Georgia's non-conference games probably don't matter. Well, that's not true. They've got Oregon in the opener.
They have Oregon.
Yeah.
They have Oregon.
They got Samford. They got Kent State and Georgia Tech, obviously, at the end of the year.
Yeah, 4-0 in that. And then, I mean, they might drop one just because they're not as dominant defensively. Maybe Tennessee. Maybe Billy Napier gets a crazy rivalry win.
I mean, that game's weird sometimes,
feels,
but yeah.
It feels like 11-1's a really safe bet with Georgia.
Kentucky at 7.5.
I want to amend an earlier take I had about Kentucky. I think that there's a chance they set up to be the SEC's most disappointing team.
Ooh.
Didn't you say they were like the most exciting, like the most
I'm interested in them
team?
for sure.
Yeah.
But that's why I said I wanted to amend the take. I think when it comes down to just wins and losses record, people are going to end up being really disappointed in Kentucky this season. Because people are talking like, it's a 10-win team. That's not what I see here.
The truth about Kentucky, and the same thing about Mississippi State, talent-wise, they're a lot closer to Vanderbilt than they are to Alabama. So they could fall apart, and it's just not that big a deal.
We also don't forget, Mississippi State is beating UGA.
How can we
see everyone
that?
in the West getting bowl eligible again, except maybe Auburn? Penn State game is a big one, obviously. Wouldn't be shocked if Auburn won that game somehow. I like Ole Miss to go 8-4.
Look, I know Auburn's got problems and all that. I get it. But have you watched Sean Clifford try to operate offense? Like, have you watched Penn State play football? Like, have you seen it happen?
I have also watched Zach Calzada and TJ Finley try to operate an offense. And if you tell me that Penn State won 10-7, I'll buy it.
Zach Calzada beat Alabama. I mean,
Well, I
he
wouldn't
did
go
that.
I mean, he did, but I'm just saying, no chance.
Penn State can't score on Big Ten defenses.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That might be a fun
trust
one,
me on
man.
the Auburn. Just trust me on the Auburn thing. I'm usually I tend to be right.
I have
When
seen.
it comes to the
You want to talk about haterade? That's it. Hate at an Auburn.
Yeah.
Hater aid.
I've seen. It seems like Auburn fans, by the way, have kind of rallied around the guy. I think most, like just your Auburn fan that doesn't donate millions to the school, recognizes how awful that was to Harsin and his family, and are kind of buying in on the guy. I've seen more like pro Harsin. I mean, seriously, if you were a Mississippi State fan, hypothetically, and a big booster tried to ruin Mike Leach's marriage, and they get through it without finding anything despite really trying, probably support the guy a little bit more, wouldn't you? I would.
You would think, yeah. You would think that, yeah.
Chase in Columbus compares Zach Calzada beating Alabama to casino billboards promoting the big winners. This is what happened one time.
It's the Steven Garcia game. I mean, no doubt. Zach Calzada is the 2020s version of Steven Garcia.
Josh
Probably
says I'm getting
exciting
tired
in
of
real life,
hearing
to be honest.
Zach Calzada beat Alabama because I thought Texas A&M beat Alabama. Ooh.
Yeah, we
Josh.
put the names of Calzada was phenomenal that night. He was exceptional that night.
He was really good that night. Hey, here quickly are the rest of the totals for the SEC. Kentucky at 7.5, South Carolina at 6.5, Tennessee at 7.5.
Over. Smash that over on Tennessee.
Over.
Florida at 6.5 in year one for Billy Napier. They do not have an
Probably
easy
over.
out of the gate game.
Hey, I'll tell you.
Probably over, though.
I like the under there.
Missouri at 5.5, Vanderbilt at 2.5. Vandy opens its season August 27th at Hawaii.
Buddy, Vanderbilt's winning more than 2 games. Watch. Hawaii's got a new coach and like their entire roster hit the transfer portal. There's 1. They'll beat Northern Illinois. There's 2. And the Elon
Northern Illinois won the MAC last year.
It's going to happen. And the Elon Phoenix are going to come to Nashville and take their $1 million in their beating, and Vanderbilt's going to hit the over and lose every other game by 3 touchdowns or more.